Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast, with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Detzel. This podcast starts now.
So welcome to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel, and not so special guest, but a guest either way.
Dani Weinstein. Great to be here,
Dani.
Chris.
It's good to have you here again.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Love being on the show.
I love having you on the show. A lot of people seem to like it as well.
Actually have beers in person again, another Smoky Barn in Dallas.
Yeah. Or, maybe I can come out there sometime. Who knows? So, we had a little pre-show and talked a lot of different things that are going on in life and community and that kind of stuff. And I know I've been talking a little bit about this on Peers Over Beers is community-led growth. And, something that I brought up is, there's kind of two lines of thinking, right? Like one is, Rich Millington said this kind of best is, the community-led growth is somewhat of this buzzword in a way, or I think it is a buzzword. But you're seeing it from a community leaders kind of take off, and specifically a couple of companies. But, Rich said, we've been doing this for a long time. Do you think companies really don't lead with community-led growth? I'm pretty sure they do. And he gave some examples, and, I agree with that. But I also I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and buzzword, not buzzword, I'm not sure. But, what I do know is that it does take off into organizations. I think it's I've been bringing it up to like my CMO and some of my peers and things like that. And I'm not going to say it's taken off in the organization, but it has kind of some meat to it, right? And what that means. And, you mentioned to me that you've been talking to some organizations around community-led growth and things like that. I'd love to kind of get your opinions on, one is maybe a definition. What do you think community-led growth is? And then two is, do these organizations really want that, or do they even know what it is? That kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And so I think if we went out and surveyed 10 different companies, we might get 10 different answers around what community even is and what leadership looks like. But I think, the way I like to think about it is really, how do you, how do you harness, especially if you're a brand, how do you harness the power of your customers to, drive value at the aggregate for the ecosystem with the power of the user base, the power of the community, more value for the user experience and ultimately more value for the brand. And so again, I think depending on who you talk to, whether it's, a VP of marketing or, wherever one sits in the organization, they're going to have their own version of what that potentially looks like. I think, on one hand, the encouraging piece is, and again, I've been talking to a lot of amazing brands, both big and small, different verticals, from, large, massive global tech titans to, startup crypto companies to, other SaaS-based B2B startups. And I think what is common is that the value of community is certainly being embraced. But I do think what I'm seeing is that value, or the perception of that value, certainly varies by who you talk to. And they're all the common theme I think here is that they are definitely looking for leaders to help drive that community-led growth. So again, it's quite for me, I'm learning quite a bit about the current space as far as how hiring is working or not working, and also really what are these brands ultimately valuing in these positions. So it's quite interesting.
That is interesting. And as I kind of look at community-led growth, I like how you said it's kind of yes, you're looking at your customers to help just put the brand out there more and things like that, and giving them the opportunity to do that. And, some of that is probably through customer advocacy and speaking engagements and all that stuff. And I think that is good. And things I've been seeing around community-led growth, and I really like it, is, and I've kind of described, where we are today as an organization is, we have this technical community that is really good and you can use them as well. But I'm also kind of thinking about the whole space within, let's say, data, for example, and then how do we find those? It could be customer executive type people, could be director levels, but it could be influencers or even you can call them prospects or whatever, just people in the space and getting that community engaged and involved. And I've seen, who used to do that really well, and I kind of I really liked it, and I think we could do that as community leaders in our areas. Is you remember Adrian, from where's he? Vanilla Forums.
Huh?
So what he would do is he didn't care if you bought their product or not. He doesn't care. Like he would just get us and he would interview us, or he would, get 3 or 4 of us and we'd do a panel, or maybe even get one of us to do a presentation. And he would do one after another. I haven't seen him do that lately, but to me, that's part of kind of, getting, so he'd get community leaders together and he would have interviews with us. He would have it live. And then people would come and listen. He would record it. I would even take it to another level, which I don't think they did, but is how do you create quick hit videos on that? Quick hit, push it into a podcast. How do you start kind of thinking of blogs that you can write specifically on maybe their behalf and things like that? So I think that, it's elevating and evangelizing them as a person and as kind of the leader in that space. And not even like for me, the one thing I started kind of pushing some of this thought leadership stuff is like this one guy that is a thought leader in the data quality space here at Reltio. I said, all right, you and I are going to get on the phone and we're going to bring in people just from Reltio and whoever else wants to come at first to try this out. And one rule, it's kind of like Fight Club. Don't talk about Fight Club, but the rule was we don't talk about Reltio. Let's just talk about the space of data quality. I think you and I have kind of talked about this. And we did it. This was last week. And, people would ask because they're from, they're using Reltio product. And he said, hey, I promised Chris I wouldn't talk about Reltio. I'll say this. And, it's about our product and stuff. Because we do have something coming up that's specifically about our product, about data quality. We'll talk about that in 2 weeks. Then we'd go on and talk about the space, right? And so I'm trying to kind of introduce the idea and then start bringing people in, outside of the Reltians. But, I need to bring in thought leaders, whether they're from Reltio or not, that talk about the space and then start getting and building that kind of stuff. To me, that's thought leadership, but also trying to get, that line of thinking into one, our technical community, but 2 is then over time, I want to start getting even the higher level folks, thinking about the space and then talking about what they're doing in that space.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure does.
What do you think? Is that a good way to kind of go about it, or?
I think it is. I mean, certainly having a cross-functional, cross set of, thought leaders to talk about that and get different perspectives is certainly good. I think again, it goes back to, how community-led is being defined at the relevant organization and putting, the data and the value behind that to demonstrate that, because I think it could be articulated several different ways.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think that just kind of sit here and think about it. One of the things I've been trying to do is how do I integrate this more? You're right. It's data, and is this really working? How can we tell if this is working and things like that? And I agree, but if you don't try it, it's not going to work, right? And I think that one of the things that I did was, and this is extremely difficult because it's just hard to kind of think about, like, when you look at marketing, for example, marketing team is doing campaigns and they're doing all kinds of different things and they're focused in on this one thing for 6 weeks. Then they're focused on this next thing for 6 weeks, and themes and things like that. And so how does community fit into some of that? Sometimes it just doesn't, sometimes it does. I'll give a little story because it's so relevant. So I was reaching out to community members over the last several weeks or months, and somebody bit, and the question to them was, hey, I'm looking at doing, I was looking at doing a community show. I call them, they're webinars, but a community show around some different areas. Are you interested in doing it? And then one of our insurance companies said, yeah, I'll do it. I said, all right, it's gonna be public and it's gonna be in front of it. Okay. And it was perfect because we were doing a big campaign around this, right? And so this guy gets on, and this was like a week and a half ago, I think.
Mhm.
He gets on. We probably have, I don't know, 80, 90 people on. And then so it was a pretty good mix of people, some prospects, customers, partners, et cetera, and employees, of course, came. And then he talked about the competition and why he chose Reltio versus all this stuff. I was like, to me, that was really good. Now, it wasn't exactly what I was like. I'm glad he did it, and everybody loved it in the organization. But I also didn't mind that if he didn't want to talk about Reltio and just want to talk about a hot topic of master data management in general, he could have. He didn't, but he talked specifically about Reltio. He talked about why they selected Reltio, why they ripped and replaced one vendor out to another, to us, and all this stuff. Talked about the roadmap, where they're going, where they're headed. It was beautiful because then I get to create some quick hit videos that the marketing team used. They used this whole insurance campaign around this case study now that was on video. And I'm going to create a blog on his behalf. I'm getting that written now. And so I'm going to have him look at it, and I'm going to have him, I'll post it on his behalf, right? Like his name and everything else. What I'm trying to do is amplify the voice of the customer. Like, yeah, I'm glad it's going to work out for Reltio, but I believe that, so it's a win-win, but I also believe that it's a win-win if it was just about what this customer is doing around master data management or whatever the key area is, because your customers win, you win. They'll talk more about you. They'll talk more about, they become the expert in that kind of stuff. If I can highlight them as the expert, and so, that's one story to where, we can now kind of, once this campaign is over, we'll be able to track it. We'll see how many, leads came in and all these kinds of things, which is really good. And it fit very well that day, into this campaign. And I think that is important to kind of think about. And I did, but it also got a little lucky, right? So, and I'm going to try to do more of those, and not necessarily case studies, but more getting those people out to start talking about their journey within the master data management space. Does that make sense? So,
totally. And I think that's kind of the balancing act especially when you're dealing with marketing, because they're they kind of have two big focuses. One is is generating leads.
Yep.
And two, nurturing existing accounts. And I think that from a community-led perspective, the latter is really where the heavy focus is going to be, because it's really about nurturing that relationship with your existing customer base and leveraging their influence, their passion, their network to help drive more business at their existing accounts, but also influencing their peers and even people who may be new to your brand. And I think that's where I think some of the marketeers have trouble or challenges with, or even don't see eye to eye with community leaders, as relates to where the valued community comes in. And so that's always been a fun challenge, but I think it's one that we're kind of charged with doing, because at the end of the day, I think educating marketing on that value add and not necessarily being solely focused on lead gen is critical for community success, but also that's a core element to community leadership.
I like that a lot. I like that you said that, because one of the things that I feel like marketing doesn't, it's not that they don't want to, but a lot of times they're solely or put more of their efforts into kind of the new business, new leads, new opportunities, that are outside of the existing customer base. I've always said, it's a lot harder to get new business than it is keeping the existing business and going deep and wide into the existing, and so if we put more focus in on that, just think what we can do. But it's a balancing act for them, but it is hard, because I'm actually in marketing, to to educate and push people to kind of think, community-led growth.
Yep.
And it is, man. Sometimes it's like, gosh, what can I do? And I think one, it's you have to educate, and it's more than that. Is you have to show value in a big way and show how that's true. And sometimes if you're doing it alone or you feel like you're alone, it feels impossible. You know what I mean? And so you just got to think of different ways to engage different people within the organization to get what you're trying to get to. And that's, you're not going to convince somebody to do something if their mind is made up. So,
Sure.
I think you just have to go other ways around it. And then over time, as you're showing value in other ways, they'll start seeing it and they'll be like, I want some of that,
Yeah. And, it goes back to, again, looking at it, really understanding your peer, whether they be in marketing or engineering or client services or customer success. How are they, how are they being measured? What is success? How do they define success? Because you've got to be able to find that overlap or that synergy with the value that community-led is going to provide.
Yeah.
So that it resonates with, your peer, so that you can get them on board to say, hey, this is the value that's going to bring, this is how it's going to impact your metrics. I think if you're not able to do that, it's going to be a much more difficult conversation and partnership.
I mean, you got to speak the same language, or you get the challenge, Dani, is I feel like we're always having to speak somebody else's language. You know what I mean? And, I think there needs to be more of a partnership. I agree that, if I'm talking to a marketing person, I should be talking about pipeline and other things like that, right? Leads, lead gen, et cetera, and community can certainly bring in that, and then when you're talking to support, you talk about support deflection and, how we can help, with that and et cetera. You got to speak the language of the department you're in. I mean, if it's product, it's ideation, it's how we can help you make your product better. It's adoption of the product and things like that. CSM, it's more about, upsell, cross sell, adoption, et cetera. So it's all those things. I agree. But sometimes I just think, why is it always me trying to speak their language? Why the fuck can't you speak my language? No, it is what it is. And that's what leadership is. And that's, I think, part of the challenge with community even today is people still don't get it. And maybe sometimes we don't get it. I don't know. Maybe we should focus in on this thing, whatever it is, and go after that thing, and then say, hey, see, oh, okay, that's great. Yes, I see it. And boom, there's the value. Here's the business outcomes. Here's those things. Okay, good. Next, boom. You know what I mean? Well, it can do all these things. It can, but I've tried to say, yeah, it can do all these things, but it's just me, or if you have only one or two other people, we can focus in on these things, and this is what we're going to go focus in on. So I think that's always the challenge. Community-led growth is a huge opportunity, I think, and to me it means a lot of different things. It could mean all the things, the same things that we've been talking about for years. Support deflection, that's community-led growth. When customers are answering questions for you, that's great. That's not the sexy thing that people like to hear. Some of the things I've heard in the past, the recent past, is, it's this old thing of support deflection, but more. Community is more than that. True, it can be, for sure. Depends on the type of community it is and what you want to build. But that to me is still a huge opportunity. Especially when you can track it and all that kind of stuff. So I've talked a lot. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
What do you think? Any thoughts there around all that shit that I just said?
No, it's it's spot on. I think, again, it goes back to I think there's a lot of noise on this topic, and I think that having folks like yourself and me and others bring things back to a focused lens and clarity is incredibly important. And it's I think in order for us to improve ourselves and to elevate the industry, we've got to be able to have that consistent talk and really talk to connecting those dots on the value add and really showing, why it's community led and the value that it brings.
Did you go to the I guess the community led growth conference or whatever that Brian and Oblinger is part of and things like that?
So I had quite a bit of it on my calendar. I had a lot of interviews that got in my way, so I had to prioritize that time. But I'm going to go back and look at some of the recordings. I did spend a fair amount of time on day one. So I saw Brian's talk and a couple others. And then the one I really wanted to see, which I haven't seen yet, I'm going to go back and watch the replays, was the HubSpot team.
Yeah.
Because that certainly I'm sure that was great. And then, but yeah, I didn't have a lot of time to spend the last couple of days.
That team's kind of new, right? You got Evan, I guess, Hamilton as kind of a director over there now, moving from bless you. Nice. You've got what's her name that just moved from Atlassian, I think. She was on a Peers
That's
Over
a
Beers.
rockstar team. I mean, so they've got Evan Hamilton leading it now. You've got Erica Moss that went over there.
Erica Moss, yep.
Shanna's been over there, and I met her actually at in Memphis. It's Stephanie Garrett. No, it's I can visually see her face. Give me a second, I'll find it.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm sure that will be interesting to hear for sure. And I think more interesting will be as that team has time to gel and work together. What is it that they're going to do in the future? And talk to them like 6 months from now. I think that will be kind of a fun conversation. Maybe I'll try to get them on, or some of them on anyways.
Christina Garnett.
Yep.
No, that's you got, Christina, Erica, Shanna, Evan. It's pretty, some real powerhouses there.
Yeah. So, I mean, how fun would that be, man? You just have a powerhouse community team that knows everything that they're doing, and the company will let you hire them. Just think what you can accomplish, something like that.
Yeah, well, once upon a time I had that when I was back in the HP days. We had a pretty amazing rockstar team that grew over time. And it'd be great to build that out again.
I agree. Next time I hire somebody, I'm going to hire a rock star. So we'll see. Both. Yeah. But well, Dani, this has been good, man.
Always a pleasure.
You mentioned that you were doing some interviews and things like that. What's up?
Yeah, so the job hunting process is long. It's always longer than people expect.
It is,
especially for us folks that are I would like to call experienced, and it's quite interesting, especially now in the given market. I think that a couple of key learnings, which I've certainly internalized the last few rounds, is that we have value out there, and you need to be able to ask for your value. If you don't ask, you're not going to get.
Yep.
So that's certainly most brands I'm talking to are not sneezing at that. They're ready to step up to the plate. I'm also finding that as going through the process, that even some brands that think they know what they want to do, they ultimately either pivot, they change direction, something happens internally, or they're not even sure what they want. And so that's just part of the, in many cases, that has nothing specifically to do with you, the individual.
Yeah.
But I'm very encouraged about where I'm at. I'm in discussions with several great brands, both large and small, and hopefully the next Peers Over Beers will have good news to share. We'll see.
I hope so, man. I was hoping when I got on today, I was like, all right, I'm talking to Dani and see what's going on. Well, something going. I do know that going through that process, I've done it before, and it's a time suck. One, it's like a full-time job, and then two is it's really, you never know what they're looking for. You just don't. Like, you could be, I know you're a great candidate, I know you do a great job, but they don't know it, and then they have like 10 other people that have opinions about it, and so there's a little bit of luck, there's a lot of skill, and you've just got to, how it is. I mean, you've done it before, even in the past, right? So, and having to go through it again, more than anybody. But I think that's kind of the lesson to me, is that, don't give up. keep going. Something's gonna happen. You just gotta keep going at it, and it's not like you have the lack of skill. You know what I mean? And even at the level you are, it's probably a little bit more less. You've got to be, one, selective, but two is those positions that you're going after are harder to get, at that level of what you're trying to. So that's also the thing, is you're not going for a community manager job. You're going for director, senior director, VP, I don't know, whatever.
Yep.
Head of that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit difficult, but once you get it, it'd be worth it.
The encouraging thing is that the roles are out there, and
Yep.
just as they are interviewing me, I'm interviewing them, and it's a process, and it takes longer than expected. You gotta have a lot of patience. But I know that I know there's something great that's I'm going to end up in a great place with a great role. So it's just a question of time. And if it doesn't happen, in the next few months or quarters, then maybe time for me to open up shop. But we'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
Yeah, start building that website and some other things, and just see what happens. Pretty cheap to do it.
Yeah, there'll be options on the table.
So, well, Donnie, it's been good. I really appreciate you coming on again. We'll do this again in another month or so. But thanks everyone for coming to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel, and
I'm Dani Weinstein. Thanks again, Chris. Have a great holiday weekend.
You too.